it's not working. Just gonna... There we go. If you've been around my channel long enough, you've probably heard about the notoriety of my Thrillville video, and while maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't, that's up to you. That's your opinion. I'm not the only person whose opinion matters on the internet. But the one argument that always keeps coming up is that it's a game made for kids. Who cares if it's bad? And I feel like that is such a terrible argument. It's so frustrating seeing the same argument come up over and over because, call it controversial, but I feel like kids deserve good things. I've got a girlfriend, she's got 2 cousins that are 2 years old and 5 years old, and I am constantly amazed at how quickly they pick things up, because, like, when you're that age, or those ages, you know, like, what, 10 things? So those 10 things become everything in relation to how the world works, because everything that's happening around you is in relation to, like, the few things you know. So everything gets absorbed, everything gets picked up. So to me, it's important for them to be surrounded by content and things that teach them important things while they're still young enough to, absorb everything. And I'm not here to make the argument that I had a better childhood than everybody else, because frankly, every generation has good things and bad things that are just cash-ins. And I'm just here to say I'm thankful for things like Blue's Clues that teach me what mail was, or how to read, or how to, put puzzle pieces together, or how fast corporate will drop you if you start having a receding hairline. I'm thankful for the computer games we had as kids, like Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego and Oregon Trail, that creates an accessible way to engage with geography and history and makes it... They trick us into thinking that we're playing games and having fun, but really we're learning things and learning how hard it was to be moving your family across the country to the Wild West. In all seriousness, these edutainment games taught us how to have fun while learning, and one company that I grew up with as a kid stands out above the rest for doing that: Humongous Entertainment. Where did you learn that wood can float, oil helps metal parts move smoothly, and how a counterweight works? Well, I learned all of those things not from just Humongous Entertainment, but from one of their junior adventure games. I mentioned the junior adventure games because those are what I'll mainly be talking about today. The backyard sports games probably deserve to have their own video at some point, so maybe that'll happen down the road. And you might have watched Peanut Butter Gamer or Brutal Moose talk about their love of the Humongous games, and as much as I love those videos and I've watched them countless times over the years, in my opinion, they've always missed the overarching idea of why these games are so timeless and valuable. Humongous Entertainment never talked down to us. Ian and Austin have talked about the art style and the music of the games they covered, and rightfully so. For the most part, they still look really good despite the 4:3 aspect ratio. But on a much deeper level, Humongous was a company that saw the potential to teach kids random but valuable knowledge while also forcing them to think critically about how objects interact with each other. And they did this in a way that spoke to us on our level. For instance, if I see a piece of wood floating in the water at the beginning of a game, I click on it, and it's apparent pretty quickly that I don't have a way to reach it. But moments later, when my foot snags in a rope that lifts me up, and I'm given that rope later, I bet I can do the same thing to the piece of wood I was trying to get before. Humongous had a knack for presenting tools like that to help the people playing the games keep moving forward. And I think it helps that a lot of the games followed a format that lended itself to plugging in puzzles and info where it fits. The Humongous Junior Adventure games mostly follow a pretty standard formula, with some variants in between each series. They're point-and-click adventure games where you take control of a character to solve puzzles by gathering items and overcome obstacles while building toward a final result, like a stuffed animal named Fatty Bear trying to plan a birthday party for his owner. In my experience, Humongous was mostly known for the Fab Four, or the characters that received multiple entries in their respective series. These characters were the icons of my childhood, and I'm sure if you played any of these as much as I did when you were a kid, you probably have your favorite characters too. But if you're just hearing about Humongous for the first time, who are these iconic characters? There was Spy Fox, a jet-setting secret agent spoof on 007 who saves the world from goat milk monopolies and imminent death from a destroyed ozone layer. There's a young superhero wannabe named Pajama Sam who faces his fears in his onesie. Putt Putt is a small purple coupe who resides in Car Town, a magical place where the evil trucks from Maximum Overdrive won and took over Earth. Across his series, he enters a local race and accidentally travels to the moon, where he has to return home after finding parts to a spaceship. And the final of the 4 pillars is the good deed doing Freddi Fish, a fish who solves mysteries kind of like Spy Fox but on a much more local level. Freddi is always traveling with her best friend Luther and helping those in need, from saving the schoolhouse from a ghost to finding where the missing kelp seeds that feed the town are hidden once they get stolen. What I think Humongous did incredibly well was make these smart, independent characters that were always trying to do something brave or kind. And I think when you're a kid playing a game, seeing a character around your age that is playing the hero or saving the day is an incredibly powerful thing to see. Outside of Spy Fox, kids are the main characters, and they are setting off on these grand adventures. Pajama Sam is a blue kid who is obsessed with his favorite superhero Pajama Man's comic books and TV shows, but instead of making you play as the superhero, Humongous uses Pajama Man as a role model for Sam to look up to and use what the hero teaches him to overcome his fears. In his series of games, Pajama Sam shows he has a vivid imagination. In order to face his fears of the dark or thunder and lightning, he uses his imagination to create worlds to explore, which personifies these fears as other people. By the end of No Need to Hide When It's Dark Outside, Pajama Sam's first game, he's made friends with darkness because Sam feels bad that people are always so afraid of the dark, so much so that darkness doesn't have any friends to play tic-tac-toe with. But even when the games don't have you taking control of a human child, the characters you do get to play as are still relatable because they're clearly supposed to appear the same age as the target demographic. And during the course of the gameplay, each game keeps the audience in mind by minimizing how many items you can pick up along the way. The games almost never give you items that you won't be using, so when you see something get added to your inventory, you know it's a piece to a puzzle that you've either discovered already or will discover soon. This makes the game incredibly approachable to pretty much anyone. And while the games are very simple and similar to one another in structure, and I wouldn't blame you for thinking they're essentially identical in premise at first, it's everything in between that makes every one of them a unique experience. The writing, the artwork that builds the world the games take place in, the characters you meet, and the constant visual gags you see when you click on a bunch of stuff around the screen all make the games feel lively and well considered. And to me, there's no better way to show off what a typical Humongous game is like than playing one and showing you how it goes from start to finish. To me, nothing encapsulates this group of games like Pajama Sam and No Need to Hide When It's Dark Outside, but other people have already covered that, so we're gonna do a different one. Freddi Fish and the Case of the Hogfish Rustlers of Briny Gulch. I didn't really choose this on any specific grounds, but other than I chose it out of a hat, I don't think this is the best or worst example, but I also think Freddi Fish gets way less love than the other characters, so let's give her some time in the sun. This entry is the 4th mainline game in the Freddi Fish series, but don't worry, the lore of the previous games isn't that deep. You don't have to play the others to know where we're jumping in. Freddi and her best friend Luther are supposed to be visiting her cousin Calico's ranch, but upon arriving, the duo finds her distraught. Her entire herd of hogfish have been kidnapped, and now it's up to Freddi and Luther to solve the case. And you might be thinking, why not call the police? Well, it turns out that Sheriff Shrimp is out of town. That's it. But now our heroes must set off into town to investigate all of the many suspicious characters around, from the sad harmonicalist drifter named Sahara Slim to the shifty snake oil salesman Gil Barker. After finding a note on the floor of the local saloon that's apparently been there for a full day and no one bothered to clean up, Freddi and Luther realize they found the combination to the secret hideout of the Hogfish Rustlers of Briny Gulch hidden in a sunken ship right outside of town. Unfortunately, after opening the door, it causes such a racket that a guard decides to stand watch to make sure no one else comes in uninvited. After trying to weasel their way in, the Rustler turns them away because they're clearly not wearing the official Rustler uniform. Luckily, the dolt at the door is reading Rustlemania magazine, which has a list of items considered the official dress code of the Rustlers. And if you paid attention to my description of how these games work, you've probably already put together that the main goal of the game is to acquire the articles of clothing required to fool the guard and get into the hideout. In my particular playthrough, I needed a bow tie, a purple 10-gallon hat, and a belt buckle with the letter K on it. The different items you need to get change every time you play, leading to a lot of replayability. Anyway, with our objective at hand, we set off to find the materials needed. As we travel the world of Briny Gulch, we also have to perform kind acts and help the people who live there in exchange for items that will help us get what we need. For instance, we find the K for the belt buckle on the sign to the kelp mines, but unfortunately it's screwed into place and we need a tool to remove it. We find the screwdriver at a construction site where a hammerhead shark and a sawfish are perplexed because they accidentally built the town's square dance floor as a circle when they needed it to be, a square. To get the screwdriver, you have to keep an eye out for a wood panel to help them fix their mess, and once you deliver it to them, the tool is yours. That's an example of one of the more straightforward tasks, but they aren't all that simple. You can find the 10-gallon hat by going to the town cabaret that happens to be in the mouth of a whale. Even though it's technically closed, Fluke the Whale allows you to investigate given the circumstances. As it would turn out, Fluke has gotten the 10-gallon hat stuck in her teeth somehow, but it's so stuck that just pulling on it won't dislodge it. Now, if something is stuck in your teeth, what do you need to use to get it out? Oh yeah, floss. To find the floss, you have to explore some more, but oh wait, what's this? Someone is tied to the propeller of a boat? Once you stop the spinning propeller, Luther sets free the person who turns out to be Sheriff Shrimp. He's not out of town after all, he was just kidnapped and tied to the boat. And of course, once you save him, he gives you the most elected public service person answer and downplay when you ask for help of all time.
Well, as a matter of fact, there are some rustlers who...
But I must be off. There's law breaking afoot somewhere. I can smell it.
You then take the rope you untied him with to floss the hat out of the whale's teeth. Hat achieved, but we're not done yet. It still needs to be purple. Luckily, when we were exploring town earlier, we found a family of octopi spitting ink into a spittoon and rocking on chairs. And...
I like this color.
To get the bow tie, we go to Harmonica Aficionado's Sans Harmonica Sahara Slim and find out he has buyer's remorse from trading his instrument for a tie.
Yes, I traded my harmonica, the apple of my eye. I traded away my harmonica for a ratty old bow tie.
You traded your harmonica for a bow tie?
Yeah, I wish I hadn't now.
The solution for this puzzle is literally just to find a harmonica that's laying around and trade him for it and fixing his remorse. Our last item on the list is a belt buckle, and like the hat, this involves a few extra steps once we get the raw materials. We already have the K, but we need to find a piece of metal to stamp the K onto to complete the buckle. We find it at Mr. Hermit Crab's house, which is just a mailbox. His major problem is that his door won't close because it has missing a part or something, and he's waiting on the mailman to deliver a package. The only problem is we find the mailman Yu and his seahorse, Elmer, up the road, stalled out because one of the wheels on their mail wagon fell off. And now we have to find a new nut to attach the wheel back to the wagon. We find the nut and gum salesman Gil Barker, and he offers to sell us a new nut for 3 purple sea urchins, the collectibles of the game that are spread about the world. Each of the Humongous games usually have this kind of secondary collectible. Putt Putt has bottles that he can recycle for money, PJ Sam has socks, you get the idea. But once we find some purple sea urchins, we are back in business and can finally get the nut for you. After heading back to the wagon, we find the nut fits perfectly on the wheel, no glue required. Unfortunately, just mentioning glue sends Elmer into a frenzy. He barrels through Mr. Hermit Crab's house, destroying it and ripping the old door off. Fortunately, now that the new door is delivered, we are allowed to take the old broken one and we can turn it into a belt buckle by bringing it to Nelson the blacksmith.
My best work!
Armed with our disguise, we can make our way past the guard, but unfortunately his slightly more intelligent companion catches us and locks us up. After making a quick escape from our cell, we discover all of Calico's hogfish, and now we can plan our rescue mission. Outside the hogfish holding cell, we find a chain and an anchor, but the chain is just too short to reach the bars. After finding a hook and creatively freeing it from being trapped behind a rudder, we can attach it to the chain and latch it to the window. After dropping the anchor, we finally free the hogfish, sending them home to the ranch. But before we can call it a day, we have to reveal the true identity of the orchestrator behind the kidnapping, Mr. Big. One thing I didn't mention because I didn't really know where to put it was the cutscenes interspersed between the gameplay that acts as red herrings to get you to think different characters in the game are in on the heist. There are moments where you think the piano player in the saloon is guilty, and Gil Barker is already such a shifty character. You kind of just expect him to be part of it. And after being wrong about literally everyone, I started to use the process of elimination, and it was the blacksmith, I guess. The smoking gun that apparently gave it away was that the dumbbell he was making at the beginning of the game appeared in the holding cell with the hogfish. I literally would have never guessed that, and I think he was just the last person that could have possibly done it, so I clicked on him last. But after accusing the entire town of kidnapping the hogfish and no doubt offending everyone who was innocent, Nelson and the Rustlers revealed they were never trying to be criminals, they just wanted to be ranchers and didn't know how to start. And with that, Calico offers them all a job on the ranch, giving us the valuable lesson that when someone robs you of your livelihood, just offer them a job. Okay, so maybe not every moral of the story is a winner, but it was just one of the many different Humongous games. Again, if you're sitting here thinking that this game seems simple, it's because it is. It's an hour-long point-and-click adventure for 5 to 8-year-olds. What did you expect, an RPG? Even though these games came out of the 90s and early aughts, they still feel new to me because the writing really holds up. Sure, the aspect ratio, the graphics, and the overall sound of the music kind of dates it, but the lessons and the morals are still relevant. Plus, it's not like these games are lost to time. You can actually play them on any iOS or Android device, and you can even buy them on Steam. If you have a kid you want to keep busy with something good for an hour, these are perfect. And like I mentioned before, every time you start up these games, there are different items to get every time, new paths to take, and everything. These games are deeper than they kind of appear on the surface. Unfortunately, after acquisitions and purchases falling through, the teams responsible for these games are scattered and dissolved, with the last remaining licenses to the brand being held by Tomo. But with the help of Night Dive Studios, they brought these games to modern devices, which is better than nothing. So while the golden age of Humongous Entertainment is well behind us, I'm happy we still have access to all these classics and can keep passing them on. Humongous was a perfect example of a bunch of developers making a deliberate decision to give kids content that helped them learn and grow in fun ways that didn't feel like they were being lectured to. And that's a fine line a lot of edutainment walked and failed to pull off. Humongous was awarded with many acclaims and trophies over the years, more than 400 awards for excellence according to Wikipedia, which doesn't exactly make them unsung heroes. I would probably say they're a bit overlooked these days, and I just don't want them to be forgotten. If you're a former developer, artist, musician, writer, or voice actor from one of these games, I just want to thank you for all the work you've done. You might not know it, but you left a huge impression on my childhood and no doubt countless others. There's really no way to put into words how special these games were to me, so thank you again. And now that I've talked to you for about 16 minutes, it's your turn. What edutainment did you grow up with that left an impression on you? If you're watching this video, you no doubt have some opinions, and I just want to kind of take this opportunity to celebrate the things that shaped us and informed us as kids. So leave your favorite edutainment in the comments down below. If you like this video, please leave a like on it. And lastly, if you want to see more content, please hit the subscribe button. I've got videos coming out all the time, so I would really appreciate it. And thank you so much for watching, especially making it this far into the video. I really appreciate it. So have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you next time.